Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Batty Gulch near Gardiner, Montana. This area is a high wooded plateau that slopes up to the west, rising to over 7,500 feet in elevation. Batty Gulch has pine, fir, and spruce trees scattered across a broad slope with a steep brushy gully along the creek. Visibility is good in most places here, as the trees are far apart and the ground is covered with grass and sagebrush for the most part. Yellowstone National Park borders the gulch just a few hundred yards to the south. It is prime grizzly bear habitat that offers elk, white-tailed deer, and moose for prey. Other predators in this area include cougars, wolves, coyotes, bobcats, and black bears. Many of Montana's residents are frequent hunters, and accessing the border around Yellowstone National Park is a key place to find animals. Deer, moose, and elk leave the safety and security of the park and wander in search of mates or food across its boundaries and into adjoining hunting units. This allows hunters who are aware of the park boundaries the opportunity to harvest game animals and fill their freezers with delicious elk, moose, and deer meat. Wildlife agencies indicate that there are 2,100 grizzly bears in western Montana, with the majority of those bears living in or near Glacier National Park in the northwest portion of the state. This leaves around 1,000 grizzlies broadly distributed over the rest of the state. Population densities of grizzly bears here average one bear for every 25 square miles. This may not seem very high, but given the amount of room and resources grizzlies require for their existence, the bears are in a state of overpopulation in ecosystems that support them. Grizzlies in this area used to have an abundant source of fat and nutrients delivered to any body of water in their habitat. Seasonal salmon runs would provide valued nourishment to the entire ecosystem and help the bears grow fat for hibernation. In the late 1940s, the construction of dams, the presence of pollution, and overfishing caused seasonal salmon runs to stop altogether. Since the 1980s, salmon reintroduction efforts have been met with a limited amount of success, but may never be restored to their previous levels, which supported bear populations. The absence of salmon has forced bears to find alternate sources of calories, which they defend aggressively from any intruder. On Tuesday, September 26, 2023, a hunter whom we will call Nick was pursuing game in Batty Gulch. Game animals are plentiful here, and sign of their presence covers the landscape as they move to find food and mates. Nick was aware that grizzlies were in the area in which he was hunting. He continually searched for signs of bear activity, such as scat or torn-up stumps. He had no way of anticipating the frightening and dangerous events that would unfold on this fateful day. As Nick hiked along the relatively clear slope of the gulch, he kept his eyes up and scanned for the flick of an ear or the telltale yellow and white patch on their rumps. He eagerly hoped for a nice trophy animal with a big body to materialize before his eyes. They are like ghosts here and can appear and disappear seemingly at whim, and finding them is frequently a pleasant surprise. Just as Nick rounded a small rise in the slope of the gulch, a large brown mass appeared just a short distance away. At first glance, it appeared to be a stump from a long-dead tree, but then it moved. Right before Nick's eyes, the stump grew a large head, revealing the distinct profile of a grizzly bear. Its dish-shaped face and huge hump of muscle on its shoulders proved to be the most ominous signs of the one animal Nick did not want to run into during his hunt. As soon as the bear lifted its head, it looked right at Nick. The bear immediately began charging toward the hunter. Nick's heart sank as he knew this was no bluff charge. He could see a large mound of sticks and dirt scraped up behind the bear as it bore down on him. He knew he had to act quickly to keep himself from harm and possibly save his own life. Nick yelled at the bear and quickly raised his hunting rifle to his shoulder. He prepared for the worst and clicked off the safety. The bear was closing in on him from less than 50 yards, and he didn't have a lot of time to react. As he watched the bear flowing toward him, he could see its fur bounce with each bound and muscles ripple as they absorbed the energy of each stride. Its head was high and steady as its eyes fixed on Nick's face. By the time the bear closed to within 20 yards, Nick had decided to fire his hunting rifle. He tried to time the pull of the trigger of his hunting rifle with a gentle bouncing of the grizzly's head. Once the sights of his rifle and the bear's head lined up, he pulled the trigger. His body jerked as the rifle roared in reaction to the man's will. The bullet tore its path like a destructive affliction and smashed its way through the bear's skull. As soon as the energy of the bullet overwhelmed the protective structure of the bear's skull, Nick watched the bear's head drop toward the ground. The bear's body tumbled and then skidded to a stop only a few yards from Nick's feet. Nick knew that he had narrowly avoided being maimed by the bear, and that he had to get a hold of authorities to report the details of the incident. They would want to know the circumstances surrounding the bear's death, and would expect his cooperation to fully understand the contributing factors of this incident. The only scars Nick would take away from this run-in with the grizzly would be the nagging questions of alternate outcomes that would wake him up on restless nights. This grizzly was one of 3 bears killed by sportsmen while defending themselves in the outdoors in the month of September in Montana, 2023. This trend is one of the most alarming and concerning issues faced by states that make up grizzly territory. After a thorough investigation, authorities concluded that the portrayal of events presented by Nick was supported by the forensic evidence collected at the attack scene. They also confirmed that the bear was defending a food cache containing an animal it had stashed for consumption. The grizzly was merely acting in defense of a valued and needed resource for its survival, even though the outcome could easily have been profoundly harmful and damaging to Nick's life and health. The evidence showed that there were no cubs observed at the scene, nor was there evidence of them being in the area. There was no cub tracks or orphaned grizzly cubs located in subsequent weeks. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think bear spray may have changed the outcome of this attack? What more could Nick have done to avoid the conflict with this grizzly? Was this bear looking to make a meal out of Nick, or was it simply defending its food cache? What would you do if you were surprised by a charging grizzly in open country? I'll be glad to read your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.